بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم
Assalamu alaikum. It is Wednesday, the 12th of June, 2022. And in our series, Reflections on the Holy Quran, this is broadcast number 292. These days, we are looking at chapter 2, verse 97 of the Holy Quran. And this is our sixth broadcast in which we are dealing with this chapter, this verse of the Holy Quran. Just to remind you that these broadcasts are brought to you by the Lahore Ahmadiyya community, which was created by Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad. And he taught us that although other people want to bring a prophet after the Holy Prophet Muhammad, some a new prophet, some an old prophet, but the Holy Quran says that the Holy Prophet Muhammad was Khatamun Nabiyyin, and the Holy Prophet explained it by saying, La Nabi Abadi, there is no prophet after me. So now, neither an old prophet nor a new one shall come to the world. Prophethood has absolutely ended. But the Holy Prophet also explained that times will come when reform will be needed. And he explained that when reform is needed, then at that time, God will send mujaddideen, reformers, renovators of religion. And of course, when such a person comes and says to you that, this conclusion that you've drawn is wrong, or what you're doing is wrong, then a difference of opinion will arise. But the Holy Prophet saw this. And Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Sahib pointed out that people are quick to jump to conclusions and start calling each other heretics and kafirs and so on, which is wrong because the Holy Prophet Muhammad forbade it. And he said that if one reciter of the kalima says to another reciter of the kalima that you're not a Muslim, you're a heretic, it's the person saying it who becomes a heretic. Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad also taught us that although people believe that some prophetic revelation like Surah Walayat or Ayah Rajam are missing from the Holy Quran, God said He has revealed the Holy Quran and He will guard it. So nothing is missing from the Holy Quran. And further, that people say that verses of the Holy Quran are abrogated. No verse of the Holy Quran was, is, or ever shall be abrogated. And most of all, as Sahib explained, that jihad is a duty of every Muslim. But jihad as defined by the Holy Prophet Muhammad. The Holy Prophet Muhammad, when returning from fighting, said Muslims were returning from the minor jihad to the major jihad. And then went on to explain that the major jihad, the major struggle, is to subdue your own desires and emotions. That is much harder than fighting an external enemy. So let's turn to the topic for today. As I said, we continue with chapter 2, verse 97. And it says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل من كان عدوا جبريل فإنه نزله على قلبك بإذن الله مصدقا لما بين يديه وهدى وبشرى للمؤمنين. Say, whoever is an enemy to Jibreel, for surely he revealed to your heart by Allah's command, verifying that which is before it, and a guidance and glad tidings for the believers. And yesterday we looked at the word musaddiqan, and lima is a connecting word. So today we look at baina. So let us turn to my notes on the computer and looking at the wrong thing here. That's better. The word, its triliteral root is ba, ya, and noon. And in total, we find it in the Holy Quran 523 times, the words made from this root. And we find 13 words made from this root in the Holy Quran. 266 times we have the word bayin, and 119 times we have the word mubin, and 71 times bayinat, and 35 times as bayyanu, and 18 times the bayyana, and the others are other occurrences are fewer, some 3 times, some once only, and it means to make clear, to clarify. to explain, to become clear, to make clear, to become clear, etc. But it also stands for, it's a what you might call location adverb, which means it tells you where. So in between, in front, and so on. Between you, between them, etc. So if you look at that, so al bainu and means in between two things. And some people say that means in the middle. So it's in the middle, that it, in the sense that it's in between. It's not in the middle in the sense that it's halfway. If two things are, 3 feet apart, then this is 1.5 feet. It doesn't mean that. Maybe 1 foot closer to one and compared to the other, but it's still in between them. And as the Holy Quran says, chapter 18, verse 32, وَجَعَلْنَا بَيْنَهُمَا زَرْعًا, and between them was created zara, cultivation. And so it also sort of means that two things are separated. If something else is between two things, they are separated. For example, the verse that says لَقَدْ تَقَطَّعَ بَيْنَكُمْ, chapter 6, verse 95. So today, your mutual relationships are cut. So something's come in between the relationship. And the verse Yawma la yanfa'u ma'lum wa la banun, chapter 26, verse 88, it shows this as well, because its translation is that on that day, neither your wealth will profit you nor your sons. So you will be cut off. There'll be something in between you and whatever those resources are, your wealth, your money, your connections, and so on. And further on, in chapter 49, verse 1, the Holy Quran says, La tuqaddimu bayna yadayillahi wa rasuli. So, in reply to something, don't butt in before God or before Allah or His prophets. Or again, coming in between, فَقَدِّمُوا بَيْنَ يَدَيِّ نَجْوَاكُمْ صَدَقَةً, chapter 58, verse 12. So before you say whatever it is, give some sadaqah, give some charity. So in between you and asking something is that charity that's intervening. But it comes in with another meaning between it. It's not always physically coming in between two things. For example, chapter 38, verse 22, فَاحْكُمْ بَيْنَنَا بِالْحَقِّ, So that says you decide between um, yourself and us. So someone is being asked to come in between, to intervene. So when it says in between, it also means an intervention, such as وَإِنْ كَانَ مِنْ قَوْمٍ بَيْنَكُمْ وَبَيْنَهُمْ مِيثَاقٌ, chapter 4, verse 97. And if the person who's been killed belongs to a tribe, to a people who have a peace treaty with you, between you and them there is a peace treaty. بَيْنَكُمْ, between them. So, but I mean, obviously, it comes in various ways. For example, in chapter 41, verse 5, we are talking about something physical. Up there, it wasn't something physical. I mean, justice isn't something physical. But here, وَمِن بَيْنِنَا وَبَيْنَكَ حِجَابٌ, chapter 41, verse 5, and there is a hijab between you and us. Now, that hijab can actually be physical, and that can be sort of metaphorical as well. Because earlier on, when the verse said, between us, do justice, that's, justice is nothing physical. But you could say that they're asking someone else to intervene, and that is physical. But then if you look at this verse, chapter 20, verse 58 of the Holy Quran, which says, فَجْعَلْ بَيْنَنَا وَبَيْنَكَ مَوْئِدًا, set a time between us. Now, I guess you could say that, in Einstein's theory, he said that time is a physical thing, it's a dimension, the fourth dimension, but we are not discussing that here. For our purposes, time is not something that is physical. In the same way, God says in chapter 19, verse 64, Lahu ma baina aydina wa ma khalfana, and whatever is in front of us and whatever is behind us. So we are in between. Or in chapter 36, verse 9, وَجَعَلْنَا مِنْ بَيْنِ أَيْدِيهِمْ صَدًّا وَمِنْ خَلْفِهِمْ صَدًّا. And we built a wall in front of them and built a wall behind them. So here this is clearly something physical. You're in between, these people are in between, and on either side there is a wall. Chapter 34, verse 31 says, وَقَالَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا لَن نُؤْمِنَ لِهَذَا الْقُرْآنِ وَلَا بِالَّذِي بَيْنَ يَدَيْهِ. Chapter 34, verse 31. And the unbelievers, they say, we do not believe in any revealed book. We do not believe in this Quran, lihazal Quran, and we won't believe in the books which have been revealed before this. So Billazi baina yadayhi. So baina yadayhi, that means so on and so forth. And then an interesting verse, Fattakullaha wa aslihu zata bainikum. Chapter 8, verse 1. Fear Allah and live together in peace. Now, Fattakullah has been translated in these notes as fear Allah. I disagree with that Allah's taqwa is being afraid of Allah. I mean, he is not some kind of dictator that we should fear. But that's a discussion for another day. But the point was here, bainikum is being used to indicate relationships between relatives and uncles and aunts and brothers and sisters and so on. And it's very interesting, that God here is asking us to respect our relationships. Now, one way in which we can respect relationships is by doing justice with those relatives, by helping those relatives who need help. And I find it, amusing and sad at the same time that the countries in which there is such a hue and cry about implementation of the Sharia, why doesn't the government make a law that implements Sharia? And people go on and on and on about that. And I find it odd that, these things are said in the Quran and we ignore them. But if some parliament or some people write it in a man-made book of law, then we'll respect it. Here Allah is telling us to respect our relationships. And if we're not going to help the relatives or do justice to them, then obviously that relationship has no value, no worth in our eyes. So if we take this argument further, then there are many countries in which when parents die, the girls don't inherit anything. They're deprived of their inheritance, although the Holy Quran clearly states that girls have a share of the inheritance. So how are you respecting your relationship with your sisters if you're depriving them of what God has granted them? And if God, writing this in the Holy Quran, doesn't affect you, then what difference would it make if some worldly government wrote it in their constitution or their law or whatever? An example would be that red light universally means stop. And in Pakistan, for example, the light is red and no one cares. People keep on driving straight through. But that's written in the Pakistani law. So why don't you obey that? And what guarantee is there that some other law that is written in the Pakistani constitution or civil or penal code, that you will obey that. There is none. Because it depends on your general sort of attitude. People can always find a way to get around things. There is a whole field called Hila that people are actually taught in madrasas. What does it mean? It means, how do you get around the Sharia, the legal rules and regulations of Sharia? And there are many examples, and I don't want to go into them. But what respect do you have for the Holy Quran if you're going to create a whole field of study with the object of finding excuses to get around the law? So this word also means to make known clearly. For example, in chapter 6, verse 55, it says, وَلِتَسْتَبِينَ سَبِيلُ الْمُجْرِمِينَ. So that the path of the sinners is clearly visible. Or in chapter 2, verse 256, قَدْ تَبَيَّنَ الرُّشْدُ مِنَ الْغَيِّ. That guidance is clear, and it's distinguished what is wrong from what is right. So chapter 3, verse 118, قَدْ بَيَّنَّا لَكُمُ الْآيَاتِ. And we have, God says, we have clearly read out to you our messages. Chapter 63, verse 63. بَيِّنَ لَكُمْ بَعْضَ الَّذِي تَخْتَلِفُونَ فِيهِ. And some things where you disagree or differ, so that I may clearly explain them to you. Bayyana, tell you, explain to you. And this expression occurs in the Holy Quran in many places. Chapter 16, verse 39, for example, says, لِيُبَيِّنَ لَهُمُ الَّذِي يَخْتَلِفُونَ فِيهِ. So that things where you disagree, they're clearly explained to you. And so this also means, the word also means to clearly describe, openly, so that everyone can understand. And in Arabic, that's called al-bayan, and in Urdu, it's also called bayan. So there's a lot of discussion about the definition of bayan. Can it be through both tongue and in writing, or can it just be in writing, and so on and so forth. But um, it means to clearly explain something. For example, God says in chapter 67, verse 26, Nazirum Mubin, clearly. He warns you clearly, explains to you the consequences of your actions clearly. And in another place, chapter 16, verse 44, it says, وَأَنزَلْنَا إِلَيْكَ الذِّكْرَ لِتُبَيِّنَ لِلنَّاسِ مَا نُزِّلَ إِلَيْهِمْ. And we sent you the book. Why? So that God's guidance is made clear to you. There's no doubt remains in what God wants people to do and how He wants them to behave. So with that, we come to the end of today's broadcast, and I take my leave of you with the prayer that whoever you are and wherever you may be, may Allah protect you from harm. Assalamu alaikum, Khuda Hafiz, and goodbye.